It's an hour and 20-minute show. I was single at the time when I made it. So I wanted to have a date on stage with a guy from the audience. So in the show, I invite people from the audience after they know about my disability to come and, go on a date with me. And so he saw it once, and the second time he raised his finger and he went on stage. And later on he said to me, it's a show about the sexuality of a disabled woman. So I was like, is it? I was like, wow. And since then, he introduced me to many of his friends, and we are not a big community, quite a small community, but there are a few artists or people who want to be artists, but they never actually had the chance to become artists because they didn't accept it to schools or life. So I have a community. It's not very big, but we're starting to kind of address it more and more. And I did a few shows, sometimes with people who reads the signs, and we did some shows in sign languages. So I'm trying to address it, and depends on the people who comes. There was one time for the other body that this guy came, and I could see he's blind. He was working with his thing, and I was like, oh no, I wasn't prepared for it. But there were students at the time, a lot of students coming to see it in Israel, and there was this girl, she was 16, and she just explained to him through the whole show. She just talked and explained to him. He didn't know her. She was just very sweet about it, and that was amazing for me. So even I don't mind when people talk in the show, as long as it's respectable, and because I know that they're helping someone. So that was like a beautiful moment to me. But I'm always trying to think of how I can include everyone. Yes, please.
Just thank you so much for your generosity.
Oh, thank you.
It's been so special. My son went to the Nataly School for 4 years, and so I've seen a lot of modern dance, and it gets really boring, to see humans try to do the same thing, and to be so obsessed with, how far they can point their toe, and a plie is a plie, whatever. So,
I'm with you.
And never mind that there are no large bodies, or there's just, so, and just seeing that my son was, he wanted to be a dancer from the time he was very little, but when they didn't allow the boys to wear the skirts, he gave it up because that was
his dream.
Yeah, that was his dream. So now he's a boy who dances and wears skirts, whatever. But I love Batsheva, and the Gaga dancing. I know it's an Israeli troupe, but what I love about it is that human movements that you don't think of as dance movements are included, and then that's actually what's really interesting. And I heard Bill T. Jones came to choreograph on Alvin Ailey Company and said to them, actually nobody wants to see your perfect moves. It's boring, we space out. They want to see you fail. They want to see you risk so that they think you might fail. So it's like the clowns in the circus where they're making it look harder than it is. That's what draws us in. So watching you put your tights on was it was completely compelling. It was so present. And you're right, your quivering is the most beautiful quivering.
Oh, thank you. But I just want to say that, especially in Britain, I've seen in the last few years, but there's some artists that work with disabled performers, or with even, let's put disability aside, non-dancers and non-actors. And because they appreciate the quality that they bring to the stage, which is refreshing, and they're not trying to pretend anything, they are who they are, and that's really beautiful at the same time. And I think that's where the new theater is going through, or the new dance. And there are quite a lot of companies in the world that do those kind of stuff now. It's still not in the in the big stage, but sometimes it is. Like Jerome Bell, if people know him, it's a French choreographer that works with different companies. Some companies with disabled performance, some aren't, but it's actually quite intriguing when you start looking online and start going around the world that you see actually there's quite a lot of companies and artists that works like that, and I think that's the new, that's the most interesting. I'm with you completely. Thank you. Yes, please.
I think kind of continues what you just said, but you mentioned the faculty in Glasgow that they were this specific professor that was creative and flexible. And I was wondering if you can expand a little bit on it and compare it to faculty in Israel. Are they creative in the same way in your eyes? Or
I'll tell you a story that I got. When I started doing my master's in Tel Aviv University, the other body was part of, it wasn't part of my degree, but I did it while I was studying there. And all of a sudden people kind of, wow, Nataly Zukerman, okay, she's got, that's really interesting. And it got to the point when I had to submit my proposal for my graduation show. And I decided I want to make another show about my disability, and Practice Makes Perfect talks about the fact that I'm owning the word I'm disabled and everyone else trying to tell me that I'm not. And the show was really about that. And when I wrote it, another professor of mine, Joel Lari, that writes about my work, and he was yes, great, do that, don't do Hedda Gabler, don't do, things like that. That's great. And then I went to the panel, the panel that's supposed to approve it. And those are the kind of lines I got. You sure you want to be defined as a disabled artist? Why are you making another show about disability? Is that not a bit boring? Who would come and see it? Those are the kind of answers I got. It's like saying to a woman, don't keep making shows about womanhood or Palestine, because this idea that disability is part of my identity is something that they don't even think about. And thank God I had this one professor that was really, going for it and kind of said, don't give up, just go and do it. And so in Scotland, at least, I felt that even if not everyone thought like that, it was a group effort. And maybe, they have a different way of looking at disability, especially in the last 4 or 5 years since the Paralympic Games. You can see in Britain, there's a lot of fundings to disabled artists and disabilities. And their perception of disability is amazing, I have to say. So maybe they're much more open than us. But in Israel, I didn't, it's individuals. I wouldn't say that it's coming from the faculty or my group of friends. And I have to, when I started living with my partner, it took him a while to actually understand that he needs to help me. He needs to, it's not just on stage. We met actually at the show. He was one of the guys who raised their hand and came on stage, and I actually met my partner like that, which was amazing. So I'm not single anymore, I'm married now. But it takes time. Even my parents, they can say a little thing sometimes. I'm like, do you know me? Remember? I can't do those kind of stuff. Or, it's really hard for people. I know it's very hard for me to do dishes, for example, because my back really hurts, after 5 minutes. My sister, for her, I'm still lazy. It doesn't matter how many doctors would tell her she can't do it, It's very hard for people to understand it. So at least for me in Israel, I find that, it's perseverance. You always have to explain. You always have to explain your story. And sometimes it's very tiring. And at least in Scotland, I felt that, what I do there, it was not so much about explaining, but it was more about finding ways to take part, which is a different effort.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I actually own a company that accepts dancers of all different abilities here in Boston.
Amazing.
Abilities Dance, shameless plug. I also have the same scar, same metal rods as you, so totally Bill and girl. Yes. But I wondered if you collaborated with other companies or other dancers with different abilities and how that influenced your work versus solo work.
In Israel, I'm working with many performers and dancers, disabled or not disabled. So abroad, this is actually my first time that I'm actually kind of stepping outside of Israel and kind of talking about it, to the outside. But that's one of the things I'm looking for, to kind of start looking at opportunities and working in, opening my eyes, because especially in Israel, it's very hard to continue making work, it kind of puts you in a very certain place. So if I want to explore those topics more, then
you guys need to
yes, please.
Well, I wanted to thank you. You energized me tonight because I've been having a problem with my hip for the past month, and I've been complaining so much, and it was so distressful and grouchy because I was limping, and trying to do getting dressed is what I've been doing for the past month. And I also wanted to say that I noticed in my condition of this past month that I noticed people who limp like me. And I keep thinking, I just notice this, like I feel part of the community where I work, and I say, are they permanent or are they temporary? And I try to scrutinize them. Are they like me? And then it's hard to accept whatever disability you have, whether it's temporary or not.
Yeah.
So I will accept it better.
I can tell you that when I take my crutches out once in a while, I get a lot of get well soon, you know. It's like people presume that it's going to go away. They don't even think no one has, in my case at least, always get well soon. So, I can relate to it. Yes, please.
You spoke about hierarchy, and I was wondering if in Israel there is a hierarchy of disability, like the people who are disabled from war.
Yes,
of
course,
reasons,
yeah.
Maybe there is more respect or more people support for people who are disabled for war reasons. Maybe they're more male.
They definitely, I think, getting paid more as their pension. But first of all, I think it really shaped the way Israel look at disabilities, because it's easier to us to look at disability as part of the war game, or that kind of how the Israeli body is supposed to look like the chalutz or the tzabar. And then people with disabilities, we don't like, in Israel, one of the biggest rate of abortions, for example, because of different, things that, and I kept asking my mom, if you knew about it in advance, would you have me? That kind of question, because a lot of my friends keep saying, we don't know if we will know that, and that's quite a scary feeling to have. In Israel, it's very common. There is a hierarchy. For example, I don't get pension from the government, for example. So you have to really prove yourself, otherwise you won't get pensions. Or of course there is, and the amount that you get from a pension is around $600, which is absolutely nothing. So there is definitely a hierarchy in that sense, yeah. But I think also there is a hierarchy in disabilities. You can't say there isn't, and there's so many disabilities also, visible, invisible, and it depends where you're coming from in life and who your family and how much money do you have, regardless of what you have. So there's so many factors to take into account. But I grew up definitely with this idea of having a hierarchy of disabilities. My mom would definitely say that.
There's a question in the back.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, sorry. I love what you said about how the acting first kind of brought you out of yourself, but then ultimately brought you back to yourself. And I think it's very exemplary of how everyone, not just disabled people, put on masks in life, but sometimes need some of the masks in order to get to true authenticity. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I just want to take this moment. For those of you who don't know, my name is Guy Ben-Alwan, and I run Israeli Stage. And I've had the pleasure to be with Nataly for the past 3 weeks and hear her share her story. And I think one of the amazing things that's come out of it is not only the openness and kindness which Nataly has been approaching this work of engaging in her story and opening it up, but also in the kindness and openness of folks like you who are creating spaces to explore these issues that are often polarizing in our societies, that are often come with their own ideas ahead of time, and the fact is that only together, only as a community, can we actually start tackling issues like inclusion, because they're difficult and they take a lot of different minds, and they take the ability and agility to listen to a lot of different perspectives together to form our path together ahead. So I'm really grateful for all of you for doing that type of work. So thank you for for joining us and for sharing in Nataly's residency.
Thank you very much.